Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I want to share with you all my thoughts on some of the abilities that have been confirmed for Astrologian, one of the 3 new jobs coming out in Heavensward. Now, I would like to say that just like with all these job videos, a lot of this information is subject to being changed before the game actually comes out in a few weeks, but it will give us a pretty good idea of the direction that the Astrologian is going. I have this and 2 other job videos to get recorded, so what do you say we just hop right into talking about the Astrologian's abilities? So we should cover that they do have several basic abilities that are similar to things fulfilled by the other jobs, the other 2 healer jobs, I should say, right off the bat. Here's a list of the abilities and their relations compared to like the White Mage, for example. Benefic and Benefic 2 being the equivalent to Cure and Cure 2, Helios being an equivalent to Medica, Ascend being the equivalent of Raise, and Detriment being the equivalent of Asuna. The only difference that may be present here, as I've seen 2 different translations, is you know how Cure has the free Cure proc for Cure 2? Well, Benefic seems to have an instant cast proc for Benefic 2 instead of that free Cure proc. We don't know that for sure yet. Like I said, I've seen 2 different translations, but it's become more prevalent that Benefic is going to, has the chance at least, to grant an instant cast Benefic 2 when it is cast, similar to the free Cure proc. But these abilities we don't really need to talk about since they are so similar to the other abilities, so let's get into some of the things that really define the Astrologian's job. I just wanted to cover these first. So the big thing that Yoshi P, well, one of the 2 big things that Yoshi P has really talked about with the Astrologian is there are 2 different stances. The names are Diurnal Sect and Nocturnal Sect. Now, these stances only affect a few abilities out of the Astrologian's kit, but the way that they affect those abilities basically make the Diurnal Sect into a White Mage stance and the Nocturnal Sect into a Scholar stance. Let me explain. So the first ability that these stances affect is Aspect Benefic. So if you're in Diurnal Sect and you cast Aspect Benefic, the Cure will also grant an additional heal over time, like a regen effect. While if you are in Nocturnal Sect, it grants a shield equivalent to something along the lines of a Loquium. Then you have the ability Ring of Fate, which acts like Medica when you cast it in Diurnal Sect, and acts more like a sacred shield that you can cast while you're in Nocturnal Sect, as it just gives everybody a reduced damage taken, or at least that's the way it's worded here in this translation. It leads me to believe it's more like Sacred Soil than it is like Succor, just based on the wording, but it could be either or. So these are the only 2 abilities that it's really listed that Diurnal Sect and Nocturnal Sect really affect, and I had a feeling that these abilities weren't going to affect every single heal that the Astrologians had, because that would be ridiculous if every single heal had these regen effects and had these additional heal effects. But it does basically allow you to fill a small niche without really taking away from the other 2 jobs. So if you have your other healer, like you're doing 8-man content and you have a second healer, and it's a White Mage or a Diurnal Sect Astrologian, you can go Nocturnal Sect and be able to provide that additional damage reduction in the form of your Ring of Fate or in your Aspect Benefic for reducing tank damage. While if you're with a Scholar or a Nocturnal Sect Astrologian as your other healer, you can go Diurnal Sect and you can grant these regen effects with your Aspect Benefic, or just do generally more AoE healing with Ring of Fate. It makes them flexible without literally making them homogeneous to the other jobs. I'm a fan of it because it means that the rest of the kit is given the opportunity to really make the Astrologian unique. I play Ninja, and the whole Kiss thing only affecting Mug and Jugulate is definitely reminiscent to this, but these are way more influential abilities than Mug and Jugulate were for the 2 kisses on Ninja. So I'm a fan of it. It should make it so it's not too difficult to learn how to play each stance. There are just slight differences that you need to maintain when going into that more difficult content. I expect a lot of people will mostly choose Diurnal Sect when going with 4-man content, but that's because I don't know enough about their AoE abilities and whatnot. So how about I reserve that judgment for later, and now let's talk about some more of the things that make the Astrologian actually feel like a unique healer compared to the other 2. Now, I just realized that I almost forgot one of the most important things when it comes to Diurnal Sect and Nocturnal Sect, and it's why comparing them to the kisses was probably a dumb idea. You actually can't change stances in combat. You have to decide before the fight begins, am I going to be in Diurnal Sect or am I going to be in Nocturnal Sect? Now, of course, again, this could change while these abilities are still in development, even though it's only a couple of weeks till the expansion, but that is the way that they work right now. You're going to have to decide ahead of time, do I want to do this just fight in Diurnal, or do I want to do it in Nocturnal? And at least that means between attempts, if one ends up being better than the other, at least for your playstyle, that you have the freedom of switching between them. Another thing worth mentioning is that the potency of these two abilities, the Aspect and the Ring of Fate, are not going to be as potent as the White Mage and Scholar abilities. Again, it's trying to fill the niche without outdoing the original roles that inspire these abilities. So, I'm still a fan of it. I'm curious how much less potency there are on the heals and the shields that come from Diurnal and Nocturnal Sect, but again, at least they're still trying to remind everyone, hey, those other two healers, they're there, they do their job, and they do it really, really well. The Astrologian is just there to fill the other role in at least an efficient enough way without outdoing the other. But there's so many other abilities that they have that this honestly doesn't even determine for me whether or not I would play Astrologian over the other healers. It's all the rest of the abilities that get me excited about Astrologian. So let's talk about those now. So I'm not gonna lie, I actually am really biased towards a lot of these Astrologian abilities because they're abilities that I'm a big fan of in other MMORPGs. So let's talk about a few of them. So the first one that we don't know if this is the actual name for it yet. It's called Dignity. It's an instant heal that's potency increases depending on the amount of HP the target has. So targets with lower HP will be healed for more from this ability. Makes it an interesting ability to cast at low HP. It says it's an instant cast heal. So I'm curious if it has a cooldown, if it has lower potency overall unless they're at lower HP. If it's on the global cooldown, off the global cooldown. These are all details that are missing from this to really determine how it's to be used. But having that option to have that instant cast heal that's more effective at lower HP, it sounds similar to Lustrate in a sense. Just it's literally more effective. Like it's not good to use at all above a certain threshold of HP, which I'm sure that the theory crafters will be figuring out very, very quickly. Another ability, now this is one of my favorite abilities, those of you who have played World of Warcraft will definitely know where this ability comes from. It's an ability called Synastry. Now, if you played World of Warcraft, you might know this ability better as the Beacon of Light. So basically, what you'll want to do with Synastry is this. You'll place it on a target, and then if you single target heal any other ally, the target of your Synastry, which is a party member, will receive a heal that is equal to 50%. So let's say you cast Synastry on your main tank, and you cast Cure 2 on your off tank for 4,000. Then the main tank will additionally receive a 2,000 point heal. It's a way of healing more than one target at the same time without actually diverting your attention away from a current target, which makes it a great raid utility when it comes to healing. It is one of my favorite tools in World of Warcraft. I have a feeling I am going to love it when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. And then outside of their other heals and whatnot, they of course have raid utilities like every other job has in the game. So for example, they have a buff called Light Speed, which is kind of similar to Presence of Mind, but instead of just increasing your spell speed, it makes all of your casts instant cast, but at the cost of reduced power. So it's gonna be interesting to see what you can do with that off the global cooldown time as an Astrologian when you go about using this, because it makes it so you don't have to worry about missing a heal because of a cast time, even if it is going to make the heal weaker overall. But I have a feeling that using this in tandem with your off the global cooldown abilities will be just as beneficial as using it for, oh crap, I need to get this heal out instantly. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Considering it lasts for more than a single cast, I'm curious, it probably lasts for no more than 10 to 15 seconds. 10 seconds would be my guess. But it is an interesting take on the personal buff, considering it has such a large trade-off. Granted, we don't know how much the power is reduced, but just having that trade-off definitely seems like an interesting way to implement this as a mechanic for the Astrologian. They are, of course, going to have an ability that restores MP, similar to Shroud of Saints or Ether Flow. And they're also going to have an ability that was supposed to be their actual LB3, but they wanted to rework it and make it more like its Final Fantasy Tactics counterpart, so they moved it to a level, I think this is a level 60 ability. If not, it's probably post-level 50. Celestial Stasis, which is an AoE stun. I guess you could call it similar to Holy in a sense, but it's supposed to be something that stops time. Like, that's what's supposed to happen in Celestial Stasis in Tactics. So they probably felt they could achieve that better by making it a large AoE stun, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the abilities we see here in the job action video. I don't know exactly when it happens, but I think it might be the last ability that the Astrologian actually casts. One of the biggest utilities that they bring, though, and this is one of my personal favorites, is a new debuff called Disable. Now, we have a lot of ways of dealing with big tank hits and AoEs in the game now, but Disable actually makes it so that the enemy's next attack will deal reduced damage. This is going to require quite the level of mastery to use correctly. Of course, the first thought is to use it on big tank hits, even though it still has to be timed properly, because some bosses do use do auto attack while they are casting their big tank hit abilities. So the other effect is, of course, if a boss is doing a large, raid-wide AoE, you can use it on them to reduce that damage as well. Of course, the boss has to be targetable, like in turn 11, for example, when the boss is targetable, as opposed to turn 9 or turn 13 when the boss becomes untargetable for the duration of their big raid-wide AoE. But it's going to be one of my favorite tools. I think that's another interesting way of giving the Astrologian some real raid utility. I'm a big fan of all these buffs. Lightspeed, I'm the most interested in seeing how it ends up playing out, but Disable is definitely going to be the one I'm looking out for the most, because that's probably going to require the most encounter knowledge in order to use properly. But I know the mechanic you guys wanted to hear about the most with the Astrologian, and that is their divining deck. When the Astrologian was first revealed, it was said that they would be able to pull cards from a divining deck in order to grant various buffs to party members. Now, people worried about the effectiveness of the Astrologian. If they were reliant on RNG, would there be any bad cards involved? And nightmares of making a mistake on Final Fantasy XI's Corsair definitely flashed through some of our minds. However, we now have mostly definitive information. Of course, like I said, some of this is subject to change, but we now have some good information regarding how the card system is going to work. Let me start right off the bat and say there are no bad cards. The cards just have a variety of effects. There are a total of 6 cards, and you will have access to card drawing right at level 30 when you unlock the job. So the first ability you're going to get in order to involve yourself with your cards is the draw ability. Draws one of 6 cards from the deck. The draw ability has a 30-second cooldown, but only after you choose to use the card. Now, if you don't use the card after like 10 to 15 seconds, the card's just going to disappear and draw will go on cooldown. So it can have effectively anywhere from a 30 to 45-second cooldown, and it's going to require really quick thinking to decide what you want to do with your card when you draw it. So it should be mentioned also that drawing is on the global cooldown, so you do have to be very careful about when you do it, because you are giving up the ability to cast a heal or a DPS ability in its place. And each of these card effects lasts for about 15 to 20 seconds, but we're going to be going over the multitude of effects and the way that can be changed. So let's talk about the effects of each of the individual cards before we talk about the other interactions other than draw. The one base interaction they all have is obviously drawing the card, then having a 10 to 15 second window to use them, and they can be used on any party member, or it seems like you can use them on yourself. None of the translations say you can, but look at that. The Astrologian just used it on themselves. I'm almost positive that that was them using it on themselves. That didn't look like they were using any of the other mechanics, but I'll leave that up to you guys to be the judge of. So let's talk about the 6 different cards. The first card can grant a skill speed and or spell speed buff to whichever party member it's cast on. The second card increases the damage done of the party member that you cast it on. The third card reduces the TP cost of whoever you cast it on. The fourth card reduces the MP cost of whoever you cast it on. The fifth card gives an ability recast time reduction on whoever you cast it on. And the final card grants reduced damage taken. Now, all 6 of those cards sound amazing. To me, the TP cost reduction and especially the ability recast time reduction, that sounds ridiculously overpowered. But you got to remember, it sits on an RNG system and it gives you a very limited time to decide what you want to do with these cards. And not only do you have to decide, well, do I want to use this card now and who do I want to use it on, but there's also other interactions that you can decide on in that 10 to 15 second window when you have drawn the card, and you have to decide if you want to use it or not. The first one is the shuffle command, which allows you to put the card back in the deck and immediately redraw another one. That's for those moments where you don't pull the right card for the right time. You just don't like the card that you drew for whatever reason, and you need to redraw one now. It only has a 1-minute cooldown according to the notes here, so it's probably going to be used pretty frequently, but I guess it depends. You just have to want to pull the right card. There has to be a reason for you to really want to put it back and redraw another card, because there's a chance you could get a card you want even less as well. Next up is the spread ability. Now, I feel like there isn't enough information on this, so I'm going to pose a few questions to you after I read what it says it does. This allows you to set aside a card for later. You've drawn a card, and you need more than the 10 to 15 seconds to decide what to do with it, so you put it away for later. You can hold it as long as you want, and the ability itself has a 2-minute cooldown. But a few things aren't made clear with this. For one, you're able to hold it for as long as you want. It has a 2-minute cooldown, but does that 2-minute cooldown trigger after you decide to save the card or after you use the saved card? Another thing that's not clear is if you're still able to draw other cards while you have this card tucked away. I'm going to guess you can't, but again, there's no information regarding that. So that's going to be real important to determine how effective the spread mechanic is. But I have a feeling that is going to be one of your most integral ways of dealing with certain mechanics or getting the right card at the right time. Because eventually all Astrologians are going to know what card is best for what times, and then knowing that whatever card you draw doesn't matter for a certain period of time. But getting to the point where you know, okay, I can have the damage reduction card for when the big hits come out. I know that this person usually starts running low on TP at this point, so I know I need the TP cost reduction card. It has the ability to be super flexible, but you need to learn how to control it. So shuffle and spread so far are really important for achieving that. So the final ability that you're going to have to interact with your deck is going to be the Royal Road ability. Now, when using this ability, it takes the card that you just drew, returns it back to the deck, and when you draw your next card, it will be boosted. Now, it's important to note, it does not matter what card you put back into the deck. That doesn't determine the effect of the next drawn card. All that the game looks at is which card did you draw. This card, when drawn under the effect of Royal Road, has an additional effect. And again, it's dependent on which of the 6 cards you draw. So for example, if you Royal Road and the next card you draw is the attack speed or the attack damage buff, it's going to increase its potency. If the next card you draw is TP or MP cost reduction, it'll just increase the buff duration for whoever you put it on. And if it's the ability recast time reduction or the reduced damage, it will decrease the power of that card, but allow you to spread it in an AoE instead. This will make it so that you're able to either just grant better effects, really. That's what it allows you to do. And of course, there's the interaction between Royal Road and Spread, where there's the possibility, hey, I can Royal Road, draw this card, great, and now I can save it for later with the Spread mechanic. I'm such a fan of this situational awareness that is required to play the Astrologian job. It's going to require quick wit, it's going to require a lot of practice, and it's going to be something that it might scare off quite a few players because of the RNG aspect and just learning to master that RNG to the best of your ability. But situational awareness, something I always love when it's implemented correctly. And we still yet to see if this is the correct implementation of it, but so far, I'm a fan of it. And there's still a bunch of abilities we still don't even know about the Astrologian while I'm on topic. For example, we don't know exactly about their damaging abilities. We know they have some AoEs. We know they have some dots, some direct damage spells. Every healer has those kind of abilities, so we know that the Astrologian has them too. There's also an unnamed ability here that says it extends the buffs on party members in an AoE. That sounds very similar to the Scholar ability that they're getting, and I'd assume it's just Astrologian buffs, but I'd be curious if that also affects the cards. Would that affect... See, look at all these interactions. All these possibilities are so crazy for the Astrologian. But let me know what you think, because there's a lot of stuff to go over here. Be sure to check out the Google Doc that I'm pulling this information from in the description of the video below, and let me know what your thoughts are on the Astrologian. But anyway, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys in the next video. We still got 2 jobs left to go. See you then. Take care.